Hello, my book friends. Have you ever had the experience at the end of a book when you just feel so seen? Whether it's by one of the characters in the story or the themes throughout the book, but something about the book that just makes you feel seen. Here are 3 such books that made me feel seen. The first book, or technically book series, is the Emily of New Moon series by L.M. Montgomery. It's a 3-book series. Emily of New Moon is the first. I first found this series when I was about 11 or 12, and I've read it multiple times since then. The book follows the story of Emily Bird Starr and is about her life being raised by her aunt. She is remarkably imaginative, deeply introspective, and fiercely protective. From the very first time I read it, I really resonated with her love of words, her love of writing, the way that she could just see and imagine and feel the depth of humanity and joy and the world around her. I love the way that she describes just living and loving life. Readers might find some reminiscences of Anne of Green Gables, and I do like Anne of Green Gables, I do like Anne Shirley. However, I find Emily Starr to be a bit more down to earth maybe, and introspective. I saw some of myself in Emily. Her deep inner workings, the way that she saw things and viewed things reminded me a lot of my own brain and how my mind works sometimes. And I always loved how she spoke her mind when it counted. She spoke up, she set boundaries, and she enforced them. I only started learning boundaries myself as an adult, so it's interesting looking back and seeing how that part really spoke to me, and how even as a child I recognized her inner knowing herself and knowing the people around her and knowing her needs and being able to speak up, and I guess kind of giving me a hope and a way of looking forward to the future as now I am able to start doing that for myself. And now I really admire that, both for my little girl self and for myself now as an adult. I do have to say, I recently reread Emily of New Moon again. And if you haven't read it, I actually read it aloud on my other channel, Classics with Bonnie. I will link to it below, where I read aloud public domain books. As I was going through it this last time, there were definitely things that I did not notice when I was a child, particularly being that it was written 100 years ago. There are definitely problematic portions with outdated and inappropriate terms and situations. I think that's something that is good to be aware of before going in, so that you can be prepared to think critically as you're reading, and if you're reading it with somebody else, to be able to have constructive conversation about it. The second book is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. It's been a few years since I read this book, and I read it from the library, so I do not have a copy with me. But this is one of those books that has just kind of stuck with me. From the book description about Eleanor, she struggles with appropriate social skills and tends to say exactly what she's thinking. Nothing is missing in her carefully timetabled life of avoiding social interactions, where weekends are punctuated by frozen pizza, vodka, and phone chats with Mummy. The story is told from the point of view of Eleanor, and we follow along with her as she starts to rediscover herself, reclaim her life, and making steps to make changes towards the life that she wants. Even though my life details are very different from Eleanor's, it made me feel seen. Eleanor is a woman in her around 30, so around that same time rediscovering myself, taking my life back, and moving forward in life. And the third book that made me feel seen, Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. This is a memoir by Jill Duggar. She grew up in the Duggar family from the show 19 Kids and Counting. In her book, she talks about her upbringing, some of the rules that she grew up with, like wearing ankle-length skirts, modesty, the famous Nike quote, and courtship. She talks about what it was like growing up on television, her courtship with Derek and how they came to be married, and then how they started to pursue therapy, boundaries, and healing. Now, I did not grow up on TV, but I did grow up in the same homeschool group as the Duggar family. Reading Jill's book made me feel a lot of things. A lot of her story and her process really resonated with me. Coming out of a group like ATI is remarkably difficult, and I didn't even have to do it in the spotlight or in the public eye the same way that Jill did. I am so proud of her. I'm so proud of the steps that she has taken, and I am so proud of her being able to reclaim her voice by writing her own story and using her words to tell her story. So as I was reflecting on all these books, I realized that they all kind of have a theme. Knowing yourself, setting boundaries, and pursuing healing and wholeness. It's interesting to me how these things have appealed to me even from a young age, and they have only grown more meaningful to me as an adult. I'm curious to hear from you. What books, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, have made you feel seen? I would love to hear in the comments.